What's growing on, gardeners? If there is one plant that every gardener should be growing in their vegetable garden, it is the cucumber. But cucumbers can be finicky. If you give them exactly what they want, they will produce like crazy. But if you don't give them exactly what they need, they won't give you squat. Over the last 15 years, I have grown dozens of different varieties of cucumbers across 3 different states, and these experiences have taught me a lot about what cucumber plants really want. And I'm going to share these experiences with all of you today. If you do these things to your cucumber plants, they will not stop producing cucumbers all the way until frost.
If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and check out my Amazon store and Spreadshop links in the video description for everything I use in my garden and awesome custom apparel and gear.
Cucumber plants are a bit of a paradox. They have the potential to be either the most productive plant or the least productive plant in your entire vegetable garden. We've all seen it, a cucumber plant that has 1 or 2 whole cucumbers on it that's starting to turn yellow and die back. And the reason why this happens is biological. Once you understand the life cycle of a cucumber plant, you can actually trick it into having insane production. That's because cucumbers don't necessarily need to be very productive. They want to just produce mature seed and perpetuate the species. And if you neglect them and let them alone to their own devices, they will do this very quickly, and your cucumber plant will have a very short life. But once you figure out how to trick these plants into production, you will get production beyond what you ever thought is possible. Trick number 1 for crazy cucumber production is to protect your plants from pests. And this is a very important thing to do because you need to do this early on in the cucumber plant's life. It doesn't matter how productive your cucumber vines are, if other things are taking your harvest from you, well, it may as well not be producing anything at all. Now, there are many ways to protect a cucumber plant that are easy and affordable, and I want to show you a few of my favorite options. The best way to protect your cucumber plants is to get the vines up off the ground. This is the best way to protect them from basically any types of pests, whether they are birds, squirrels, rabbits, insect pests. Getting them elevated, growing them vertically is the best way that you can protect your harvest to the best ability possible. And there are lots of ways that you can get your cucumber plants up off the ground, but my favorite way is string trellising. String trellising simply means to allow the vine to grow like a vine up a string. And I've done this many different ways. One of the easiest ways is just to run an 1/8-inch steel cable up overhead about 7 to 8 feet high, and then use double tomato hooks with a synthetic twine. It's very important that you use a nylon twine because that won't wear out in the rain and the elements like a cotton twine will. Cotton and other natural fibers, they will shrink, they will breathe, they will degrade. You don't want to use them. You want to use a synthetic fiber like nylon. So what you see right here is a string that I have run about 7 feet overhead, and these cucumber vines are starting to grow up the string. But these cucumber plants won't necessarily grow up the string on their own. We will actually have to progressively clip them to the string, and to use that we're going to use these plant clips. Now, they are very easy to use. They have a little center that fits perfectly along the string, and then you will just lift up the vine, and every few nodes you'll just clip it up the vine. And it's important that we do this when they're very small. As they grow taller and taller, you'll need to support them less and less, so you can increase that clip spacing. Let's take a look at this cucumber vine right here. You'll see I have this clipped down low. I have 1, 2 clips. And actually up here where I'd clip the 3rd clip, look, this is pretty cool. The actual runner of the vine itself grabbed onto the string. And while that is very helpful, we don't necessarily want to trust that runner because some of these cucumber varieties, they get so productive that the runners can actually break under their own weight. So we are still going to take one of these plant clips, and we want to try and grab it right underneath a node, because the nodes where the leaves are, which is right here, that can hold the most weight. So we're just going to press that clip right underneath the node, and we are going to clip that. And that is going to lend more and more support. And there we have a perfectly supported cucumber vine, and we will just progressively do that as the cucumber vines grow. But that's not the only way to grow your cucumber plants vertically. For example, you can grow them along a cattle panel trellis. Now these right here are indeterminate tomatoes, mostly cherry types that grow as an indeterminate vine, and they're growing up along a cattle panel trellis that I just stapled to the back of my wood fence. You can do something like this. You can buy a big cattle panel trellis and you can just mount them to a few T-posts. Either way, this is a great way to support cucumber vines. This will give you a little bit of a closer look. These can be lower maintenance because they allow the runners of the vines to grab more areas and have a much larger surface area to grab onto. And they'll also grow in and out of the slats of the cattle panel trellis themselves. So because of this, they require a lot less maintenance since you won't have to go ahead and clip them every 6 inches or so. Here's another example using some smaller vines. Now these again are not cucumbers. They are a vining squash and a honeydew melon, but they're in the same family as cucumbers. They are all cucurbits and they are growing up along a cattle panel trellis. So you can just pretend that these are cucumber plants and they will grow in the exact same way. Once they get started, they will eventually fill out this entire trellis that you see right here. Another way I like to grow my cucumber vines is up my rain gutter. Yes, I'm actually using the rain gutter as a trellis. I simply take those double tomato hooks with the twine and I hook them to the top of my rain gutter, and this has been a fantastic system to grow things like cucumbers and indeterminate tomatoes. Now you can't go too crazy with this method because you can't put all that much weight on your rain gutters. You have to be a little bit conservative here, but I have done great over the last 3 years, every year, growing a few plants of choice up the rain gutter. It makes it really easy to just hook the double tomato hooks on with a few S hooks that are made out of plastic so it doesn't scrape your gutters. And also, there's lots of benefits to growing under the gutters because the soffits that overhang, well, that protects them from excessive rainfall, and the house itself is a great windbreak. So there's a lot less damage that happens with the winds. They're in a very sheltered and protected location. Plus, they get the radiative warmth of the house come the fall. So these actually wind up being my latest producing plants when the stuff in my open garden eventually gets killed. Since these are in such a sheltered location, they usually last a little bit longer. Trick number 2 to get your cucumber plants to produce like crazy isn't really a trick at all. It's a reminder, and that is to fertilize them regularly. Cucumber plants can grow from seed to producing mature cucumbers that you are physically picking off the plants in as little as 50 days. They are one of the fastest growing things that are commonly found in backyard vegetable gardens. And all of that speed, well, that requires a lot of energy. So you have to fertilize them regularly, otherwise they will fail to grow at a rapid rate. Cucumbers are very heavy feeders. So for that reason, we need to fertilize our cucumber plants every 2 weeks. Twice a month. We have to get on a regular fertilizing routine because if we keep skipping out on it or we miss it, well, our cucumber plants are going to run low on nutrients and they are going to stall on us. If you're curious about any of the products that I'm featuring in this segment, I will place direct links to them down in the video description for your convenience. Now that you know how often to fertilize your cucumber plants, what should we give them? Well, if you want an extremely detailed rundown on how I fertilize my whole vegetable garden, I will link to a video both above and down in the video description that I just made a couple of weeks ago that is a complete guide on how I fertilize my vegetable garden so it explodes with growth. But if you want a quicker rundown on how I specifically focus on cucumber plants, this is how I do it. It consists of a dry fertilizer component and a liquid fertilizer component. And the key to the dry fertilizer component is going to be an all-purpose fertilizer. It doesn't have to be this exact Espoma plant tone product. It just has to be a general purpose, all-purpose organic fertilizer. Now this one has an NPK of 533, which is great for all-purpose fertilizing, but anything around a 555, 444, 454, 345, anything where all of the numbers are represented and close together and not separated by 1 or 2 notches is going to be just fine. And then the secret powder that I add is bone meal. Bone meal is incredibly important to the production of flowering and fruiting vegetables like cucumbers, tomatoes, eggplant, and bulbing vegetables like your potatoes, your sweet potatoes, and your onions. That's because this is a concentrated source of phosphorus and also calcium. And phosphorus and calcium is excellent for strong root development and also strong tuber development if you're growing a tuber like a potato. But all of that phosphorus greatly influences the blooming cycle. So bone meal is one of the best things that you can do to boost blooming. So if you're growing anything that flowers, even if it's not an edible, even if you're growing roses or hydrangeas, or you're growing fruit trees or ornamental flowering trees, bone meal is a great additive. Now, the thing that you have to understand with these granular organics is they are precursors to fertilizers in their raw form. They're made out of ground up raw materials, so because of that, they take a little while to break down. The day you apply them, they don't really do anything. They have to be consumed by the soil microbiology, and they need to decompose, and that is when they release their nutrients. So they kind of take 2 or 3 weeks to really kick in. That's why it's so important that you repeat this process every 2 weeks, because we want to constantly feed them so there are always nutrients that are in the process of breaking down and slowly trickle feeding our plants. Now, when it comes to dosages, what I like to do is I like to give each individual plant about 1 tablespoon to 1.5 tablespoons of the organic all-purpose and anywhere from half to 1 tablespoon of the bone meal. You will spread that in a circle around the base of each plant because the roots come out in a circle. You can take your fingertips and just work that into the top inch of the soil, or you can place it and then cover it with some mulch or a small handful of compost. Now, one of the things I like doing, which makes life a little bit easier, is I like taking a 5-gallon bucket that you see right here, and I like filling it with 3 parts of the organic all-purpose fertilizer and 1 part of the bone meal. So in that 3-to-1 ratio, you then mix it around, and then I have an all-purpose fertilizing blend that's perfect for all of my fruiting vegetables, and then you can just give each plant 1.5 to 2 tablespoons every 2 weeks, and that can make your life a little bit easier so you don't have to drag around 2 bags. Then after that, I like to add a liquid fertilizer component. The reason why we use a liquid fertilizer component is the liquid fertilizer is available right away. It has either been processed naturally or in a lab somewhere, so the day you apply it, the roots can start uptaking the nutrients. So there's no lag time with them. So for that, I like using fish fertilizer, which is my absolute favorite organic water-soluble fertilizer product. Now, the only downside to fish fertilizer is it is a 5-1-1 NPK, so it's 5% nitrogen, 1% phosphorus, and 1% potassium, so it's very nitrogen heavy. And while this is absolutely chock full of the nitrogen that your plants need to put on leafy green growth and full of every healthy micronutrient under the sun to prevent nutrient deficiencies, it doesn't have a lot of P and K. So for that reason, it's not the greatest on its own for flowering and fruiting plants. So for that reason, I like to give that watering can a fortification with a little bit of half-strength all-purpose Jack's 20-20-20 fertilizer to balance it out. So again, in that watering can, you will put 2 to 3 tablespoons per gallon of Alaska fish fertilizer and half to 1 tablespoon per gallon of the Jack's 20-20-20. If you don't want to buy a big bag of Jack's 20-20-20, you can just use something off the shelf like Miracle Grow Tomato, which is an 18-18-21, or if you want to stay 100% organic, you can get yourself an organic water-soluble fertilizer. It doesn't have to be any of these brands specifically. That's not really the point. The point is that you follow up the organic fertilizers with a water-soluble fertilizer that the plants can uptake immediately. Just always make sure you put down the granular organic fertilizers around the base of your plants first, then follow up with the watering can full of water-soluble fertilizers, because you need to wet down those granular organics to start the decomposition process. So when you apply the dry fertilizers, you want to put the liquid fertilizers right on top of them. Do that every 2 weeks, twice a month. Trick number 3 is the most important cucumber growing tip of all, and it is the one that so many gardeners fall victim to. That trick is to pick your cucumbers as early and often as possible. Remember in the beginning of this video, I told you the story about that cucumber vine that we've all seen that has 1 or 2 fruits hanging off of it that's starting to turn yellow, and then the vine dies back and all it did was produce those 2 fruits? Well, that is a result of allowing the cucumbers to produce mature seed. Cucumber plants take reproduction very seriously. As soon as a cucumber plant produces mature seed, it says, well, I have fulfilled my purpose on this earth, and it will begin to quit on you. It will shrivel up, it will turn yellow, it will die back. It doesn't have a reason to go on anymore. So if you neglect your cucumber plants, if you let them germinate, produce the first flush of flowers and the first flush of fruits, and then those fruits turn large and yellow and they produce mature seed, well, that's it. Those are all the cucumbers that you are going to get off of the plants. So if you are a lazy gardener and you do not check your plants over every single day, cucumbers are probably not the crop that you want to grow because they require constant picking. Now, that downside about cucumber plants, that if you let any of them mature and turn yellow, the plant dies, well, we can also exploit this biological thing to our advantage. We can trick the cucumber plants to producing insane amounts of fruit. And that is, as soon as the plants start producing cucumbers, after they get a few inches long and about an inch wide, pick all those cucumbers off. If you do this, if you keep pulling all of those fruits off before they get anywhere close to maturity, the plant will freak out and say, oh my goodness, some predators must have found me. I need to react by producing as many fruits as possible to have a chance that they miss one of them and something produces mature seed. So they will react by going into hyper production mode, and you will have more cucumbers than you know what to do with. That is the beautiful thing about cucumbers. The more you pick, the more they give. Once our cucumber plants start producing flowers and fruits, it is important that we check them over every single day, that we run through the vines, we lift them up, and we make sure that we do not have any mature cucumbers hiding anywhere, because even if we think we did a great job and we checked everything over to the greatest degree possible, if we missed one cucumber hanging or hiding underneath all the vines and it turns yellow on us, well then that plant produced mature seed, it fulfilled its biological reason for existence, and it will have a literal existential crisis and it will go into decline and will need a new cucumber plant. So we have to be really diligent when we grow cucumbers. The better we check them over, the more we pick, the more we will get. This is a reason why it is such a good idea to grow our cucumber plants vertically. If we allow them to sprawl along the ground, it's really easy for the leaves and the vines to cover up a mature cucumber and we'll miss it. So when you let them grow along the ground, it's a lot harder to find those fruits. When they grow vertically, they are much easier to find. So what does a mature cucumber look like? Well, a mature cucumber is going to reach maximum thickness. It's going to be a fat boy. And again, that's going to vary from cucumber variety to cucumber variety. The best way you can tell is by the color. You want to pick your cucumbers when they are a nice dark green, because dark green cucumbers are immature cucumbers. The more mature they get, they will turn a lighter and lighter shade of green until they eventually turn a pale yellow. Once they turn that light green, pale yellow, well, now it means that the end of life of that cucumber plant is coming soon. You never want to see those colors on your cucumber plant. In fact, if you remember that cucumber vine I showed you that was trellising up my rain gutter, that was one of the first cucumbers I planted for the season. Well, I checked the bottom and I actually found 2 cucumbers at the bottom that were actually more mature than I wanted them to be. Now this one is a mature green color. This is actually a little bit further along than I wanted them to be. But this one right here is literally starting to change to that almost yellow color. If I were to have let this go for another 2 or 3 days, that vine probably would have quit on me already. So even when it's a really young plant and it's only been in ground for a few weeks old, that is enough time for the plant to produce mature fruit. So you really have to keep an eye out and be diligent, otherwise your plants will die back on you. Trick number 4 to make your cucumber plants produce like crazy all season long is to succession plant them. Next to accidentally letting a cucumber mature and turn yellow on the vine, the biggest mistake gardeners make is trying to keep the initial cucumber plants that they planted out in their garden in spring alive all summer long. That's a huge mistake. Cucumber plants, even if you're picking them early and often, even if you're fertilizing them very well, they just don't have long lifespans. From the day you plant that seed, you will be harvesting cucumbers off that vine in about 50 to 60 days. And most of us have anywhere from a 180 to 250 day long growing season. Those vines are just going to quit on you. They're not really going to last more than 90 to 100 days in most conditions. Cucumber plants are just very finicky. They are vulnerable to fungal diseases, bacterial diseases, insect pests. They're very vulnerable to the cold. Nights underneath 50 degrees really damage them, but heat over 90 degrees also damages them. They don't like being in really strong direct sunlight throughout the middle of the day either. That's why you'll often see your cucumber leaves wilting in the heat of the summer during midday when the sun is really strong. They just are not long-lived plants, and trying to fight your way through all of these problems and try and force them to limp along throughout an entire growing season, there's just no reason to do so. So what I recommend everyone do is they start fresh cucumbers from seed every 6 weeks. That will give you newer cucumber plants that will be nice and young and vigorous to replace your old cucumber plants, and you can keep the cucumber train chugging along all summer long. Now, it is very important to note that when I say start new cucumber plants every 6 weeks, I don't mean rip out your old cucumber plants and replace them with new cucumber plants every 6 weeks. You need different locations strategically placed around your garden to put the new plants, because what you want is, you want your initial planting to be starting to produce mature cucumbers when your seedlings go out into your garden. That way, by the time these vines get old and quit on you, well, the new vines will be coming into their own. And then you can rip them out and replace them with another planting. So when your second planting gets tired and starts quitting on you, that third planting will be coming into its own. So if you put new plants out into your garden somewhere every 6 weeks, you are always going to have cucumbers somewhere that are in their peak production stage, that are growing healthfully and vigorously, and they haven't been damaged by things like powdery mildew or other fungal diseases just yet. So please, don't try and keep those tired old vines alive the whole season. It's not going to work out for you. You saw all the vines I have growing around my garden. None of them are all that advanced, and I still have yet a couple of young vines that are going to be ready to go in about another week or two as transplants. You always want to have a couple of these things on deck, ready to go into your garden. That way you always have peak production of cucumbers all the way up until frost. And trick number 5 is the thing that really brought my cucumber production into hyperdrive, and that is to switch to Ganeous Parthenocarpic varieties. Whoa, hold on. What does that mean? Cucumbers are part of the cucurbit family of plants. That includes cucumbers, squashes, gourds, and melons. And when it comes to most plants within this family, they are monoecious. Monoecious means that one single plant has separate male and female flowers. So while each individual plant is self-fertile, meaning it can pollinate itself, there still needs to be pollination that crosses from the male flower over to the female flower. And typically this is done with pollinators. So most of your cucurbits, your cucumbers, your zucchini, your squashes, your gourds, your pumpkins, your melons, whether they're watermelons, cantaloupe, honeydew, whatever, they are going to produce an abundance of male flowers and a handful of female flowers. The male flowers are going to be a standalone flower that only contains pollen, and the female flowers are going to have a little baby fruit attached. There's going to be something like anywhere from 2 to 4 times more male flowers than female flowers in order to ensure pollination. If that female flower does not get pollinated by a pollinator, if there's not pollen transfer, or you didn't manually come out with like a mascara brush and transfer the pollen from the male flower to the female flower, it is going to turn yellow, shrivel up, and fall off. So if you've ever seen little baby cucumbers or zucchini that are this big and they're turning yellow on you and shriveling up and falling off, that is because that fruit did not get pollinated. So if you are growing typical monoecious varieties of cucumbers, which is the overwhelming majority of them, you are going to need good pollination, otherwise you are not going to get good fruit set. And even if you have lots of pollinator activity in your yard, you still have to deal with the fact that most of the energy of that plant is going to go into producing male flowers, so a monoecious variety of cucumbers can only produce so much. Some varieties of cucumbers are gynoecious, which means they have a genetic trait that allows them to only produce female flowers. So you can go out and you can get a gynoecious variety of cucumber, and every flower is going to be female. They will produce nothing but fruits. They won't waste any energy on male flowers. Now, in most traditional gynoecious varieties of cucumbers, you still need to interplant monoecious varieties that have male flowers on them, because you still need pollen transfer. So something like every third plant will have to be monoecious in order to get decent pollination, because if all you grow are gynoecious varieties of cucumbers, you'll only get female fruits and none of them will get pollinated, and you will get zero fruit. However, there is a third type of cucumber, and that is a gynoecious Parthenocarpic cucumber. Parthenocarpy means that a fruit will persist even without pollination. So, for example, all the figs that we grow, they all have a genetic allele for Parthenocarpy. They don't need any pollination from a male caprifig. They can grow anywhere in total absence of pollination. It's not a GMO thing or anything like that. It is a natural genetic trait. And breeders have exploited that genetic trait to make gynoecious Parthenocarpic varieties of cucumbers these days, and they've become incredibly popular. So this means that the cucumber varieties that are both gynoecious and Parthenocarpic only produce female flowers, and they don't need any pollination at all. So all of the flowers that they produce will contain a fruit, and all of those fruits, at least for the most part, will persist and they will grow into mature fruits. Now, it's not going to be 100% because things like pests will get them. Stress can cause some flower drops, so if it's too hot or too humid or too wet or too dry, you'll lose some. But the point is, you can grow these varieties indoors in a greenhouse with no wind and no pollinators, and they will produce incredible amounts of fruit with no energy wasted on producing male flowers, and you don't need to rely on any pollinators. The cucumber plant that I'm showing you is a variety called Merlin, and it is both gynoecious and Parthenocarpic. It does not produce any male flowers. So every single flower that is on this cucumber vine right here is a female flower. And the production of this variety is absolutely radical. You see, that is a female flower. It has a baby fruit attached. And because we don't need pollination, as long as the weather stays agreeable, every single one of these cucumber flowers will turn into a mature fruit. So there is no energy at all wasted on male flowers. There is no need for pollinators because they will persist. And what is really cool about these fruits that grow on these gynoecious Parthenocarpic varieties is if you don't grow any monoecious varieties next to them, look at that. All of these are female flowers. They're all going to turn into mature cucumbers. Isn't that crazy? Anyway, if you don't grow any male flowers anywhere near them and they grow in total absence of pollination, they will be seedless. This is the Merlin cucumber that I showed you earlier in this video that I almost missed and allowed to over mature. Well, I've been taking bites off of it in between takes filming this. And all of the varieties of cucumbers that I'm growing this year are gynoecious and Parthenocarpic. I don't have any male cucumber flowers anywhere in my yard and garden this year. So that means that virtually all of my cucumbers, unless I get some kind of genetic mishap where a few males are produced, they're all going to be Parthenocarpic, and they're not going to have any seeds. So if I cut into this, and don't worry, this is a special knife that you can actually run across your skin. It's one of those as seen on TV knives. Well, you see these endocarps are hollow. There are no seeds produced in any of these because they weren't fertilized. They weren't pollinated. So we have here a completely seedless cucumber. Now what's amazing is when you let a cucumber get too mature like this, they often turn bitter. But these Parthenocarpic gynoecious varieties, they don't get pollinated, they stay seedless, and they resist bittering. They're also almost all burpless as well. So even when they get more mature than you want them to be, they still taste really good. I mean, just listen to how crispy and crunchy this is. just fantastic. Now, before you say, gee, thanks for telling us now, I already bought my seeds for all my cucumbers for the year, so you're way too late. I actually did make a video about this 3 months ago prior to everybody buying their seeds because I wanted to get this information out there before everyone made their seed purchases, but unfortunately, gardening interest is just a lot lower that time of year. It's completely understandable, so I wanted to reiterate the point in this video right here. Now, that being said, as we already discussed in this video, we should be starting new cucumber seeds every 6 weeks anyway. So even though we're technically in the heart of the growing season, almost all of you watching this have more than enough time to start at least another 2 to 4 plantings of cucumbers and grow all the way to September or October, or you folks in warmer climates, maybe even all the way until Thanksgiving or Christmas. So it is not too late to go out and buy seeds. And for your convenience, here is a list of different Parthenocarpic varieties of cucumbers: Bait Alpha, Chelsea Prize, China Jade, County Fair, Crispy Crunchy, Diamant, Diva, Excelsior, H19 Little Leaf, Isnik, Katrina, Merlin, Party Time, Piccolino, Socrates, Sweet Success, Tasty Jade, and Tyria. Now, this is by no means a complete list, but it's a pretty good list to get you started. And for your convenience, I will also place some links down in the video description to these seed varieties, so if you want to give them a try, well, I can make things easy for you. And that right there are my tricks to making cucumber plants produce non-stop throughout the season. These are not casual little tricks. These are not little clickbaity things. These things actually work. I've been implementing these things throughout the states of New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina for almost the last 15 years of my life. I've tested these things in all different climates, and they work like gangbusters. They have revolutionized my cucumber growing game, and I know that if you implement these tips, you will see a tremendous increase in your cucumber production. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring that notification bell so you're notified when I release more videos like these. Again, for any of the products that I featured in this video, like the trellising items, or any of the fertilizers, or the cucumber seeds, I placed links down in the video description for your convenience so you can find them. For everything else I use in real life to grow anything in my vegetable garden, all of those products are linked in my Amazon storefront in the video description. So expand the video description, click on the Amazon storefront link, and you'll see everything I use in real life. And while you're down there, please also check out my spread shop for custom merch if you want to support my channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. Wow, Dale, do you see what I see? Look at this gator head, buddy. Look at that gator. Look at him just hanging out. Let's see if we can say hi to him. He's not very big, but still, that's a gator. So cool. This is why you don't want to bring your small dogs around the ponds in North Carolina. All right, buddy, I think that's close enough. Let's get back to our walk. I'm getting attacked by biting yellow flies because we're too close to the pond. But other than that, it's actually a pretty nice day to go for a walk with your best buddy Dale and go gator sighting.